have been really privileged to participate in what I believe has been an extremely rich, diverse, and rich, substantive exchanges during the whole day. So I will not be able to summarize all the discussions. Let me just give you a very personal perspective on the main topics of discussion of this very rich and intense day. We have discussed innovation, namely from the entrepreneur's perspective and opportunities there are in Africa now for innovation and growth. We have discussed the shift for the so-called give-a-donor recipient perspective to a more equal participation, the partnership of equals, that it is the topic of this conference. We have also discussed shared imaginations and the diversity, the talent, and the migration flows. And if there is one point I can see common in all these discussions we have, is the importance that was given to the narratives, to the perceptions and misperceptions, to prejudice as well. So the role of images, I would say cultural issues on the broad sense, not only in the broad sense, some people spoke about culture and the arts, but also the cultural issue. How we in Europe look to Africa, and how in Africa look to Europe, and how we look to ourselves. What is the role of these perceptions? And I think I can wrap up saying that the basic tone was a tone of confidence. I was happy to see that we did not, as it is so common today, give up to what I call the intellectual glamour of pessimism, when everybody wants to predict the worst, believing that everything is going for the worst. No, we have seen great messages of hope, also with realism, as was just now the case of brilliant presentation by Mr. Antonio Vitorino, showing the positive evolution in terms of migration, but also the persistent problems that we have today. We have also heard the message that was brought to us by Koen Doens from the European Commission in terms of development, the need to, instead of focusing on helping solving Africa problems, supporting African solutions. So in fact, there is a shift in the way we are now looking to the issues of relations between Europe and Africa that I believe is much more constructive, both for Africa and for the European Union. And today we also had the privilege of having not just a discussion in general about Europe and Africa, but with a concrete example. We were honored to receive here, in a conversation between presidents, the president of Mozambique, Mr. Filipe Nyusi, and the president of Portugal, Professor Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa. And for those of you who are not from Portugal, maybe you understood the complicity, the natural complicity that exists between Mozambique and Portugal. And with the very concrete narratives of what happened after these catastrophic events in Mozambique and in that part of Africa that mobilized not only the Portuguese authorities, but the society. And I want to underline this point, because when we speak about Africa and Europe, it should not only be about, or should not mainly be about governments or institutions or the public authorities, but also about our societies, including, as the president of Mozambique said, small and medium-sized companies. How can we really create a more dense network of connections between people, societies, civil societies, companies, including small, medium-sized companies, and in general, our citizens, including, and that was underlined by many of you, women. We had just now a panel of brilliant young women, but also young people in general. So I think this is also an important point to take as a takeaway from this conversation, that for the future of relationship between Africa and the European Union, yes, it's great what we can do at public level, namely the ODA, the public assistance to development, but it's more important, probably more strategic and more efficient to think how we can put the societies together, put them together, creating a higher level of complicity, if I can use the word complicity between Africa and Europe. Now, are there reasons to speak about complicity between Africa and Europe? Very often we listen in the media the idea that Europe is losing Africa, presence in Africa, that China is winning all the battles. But let's look at the facts and the figures. In terms of trade and goods, and my latest figures are 2018, the European Union, the trade between European Union and Africa, we are by far the more important partners of Africa. We are at 32.9% of the Africa trade of goods is done with Europe, 270.8 billion euros. Second, very distant, is China, 17% of the trade of Africa with China. Third, very distant, United States, 6%. So European Union is by far the biggest partner of trade in Africa. Many of us do not have that impression because typically we see the statistics about countries, Germany or France or Italy or Spain or UK or Portugal or others. No, but European Union is really a very important partner of trade to Africa. If now we consider the stock of foreign direct investment in Africa, European Union is by far the number one, European Union with member states, 283 billion euros. Second, United States with 49, and China comes third with 36. If you look at the ODA, so official development assistance, the European Union and its member states, according to the OECD figures, are 50% of the aid to Africa. The United States comes with 27. The Chinese do not give us official figures about their development aid, so we really don't know exactly. But these are the statistics and these are the official figures. But as I've said, it's very important to focus not only on the public assistance, but also on the complicity between societies. At the same time, we need the guidance of our strategy. And at European level, I think we should also, without being arrogant, we should be proud. Since the summit in 2000 in Cairo, and the very important summit that took place here in Lisbon in 2007, I remember well I was at that time leading the European Commission, and it was during the Portuguese presidency of the Council. That's when we defined the joint European Union-Africa strategy that remains valid. And it was recently, by the way, reinforced or restated in the Abidjan African Union European Union Summit, the fifth summit, in November 2017, that was concluding for the need to strengthen resilience, the efforts for peace, security, governance, and a new Africa-Europe alliance for sustainable development jobs. But the priorities that were defined in Lisbon in 2007, the key strands of African Union, European Union action, they remain valid. First, strategic investment and job creation. Secondly, investment in education and matching skills and jobs. Thirdly, the need to promote a more friendly business environment and investment climate. And fourth, the economic integration and trade. And in these areas, we are seeing promising developments, including the idea of a pan-African free trade area with the ultimate goal, strategic goal, or why not, to have a continent-to-continent free trade. And by the way, the European Union remains committed, and recently it was concluded after so many years at negotiators' levels. Let's see if it's now ratified. But the agreement between the European Union and Mercosur, and just now with the European Union and Vietnam, so it's important. In a moment when we see so many push for protectionism, sometimes nationalism and populism, it's important that the European Union keeps an approach of openness globally. And I think that in Africa we are seeing that as well. We have seen very interesting development. There were mentioned some panels from Ethiopia, from Rwanda, what's happening in some areas of Africa for a more open regional integration, including the programmatic or aspirational goal of a free trade area for Africa. Why not? That I think it will be great for the future. The issues of mobility were mentioned here. Now, also, with the point of saying that part of this mobility, part of migration comes from tragedies, from wars. There are experiences we'll never forget. I will never forget when I was with Prime Minister, a letter from Italy in Lampedusa. At that time, I was in the commission, and I saw 300 coffins in the hangar of Lampedusa. 300 coffins, people that wanted to reach that island in Italy to come to Europe. Most of them were African. Basically, it was from one side Syrians, but also people coming from Somalia, from Eritrea, from Africa. So, to a large extent, the issue of migration is driven by these catastrophic, natural or man-made catastrophes. But it is also true that, as it was highlighted in the recent panel before the last statement, that it's also a human aspiration for mobility. I remember a great intellectual, George Steiner, who said once, he was in a panel, we were discussing with someone, and someone was speaking about the roots, the importance of roots. And George Steiner, a great Jewish intellectual, he said roots, but roots, okay, it's okay roots, but roots, it's trees that have roots. We humans, we have legs to walk. And I believe that we should be proud of our roots, but basically we have legs to walk. And that has been a human aspiration since the beginning of mankind. Migration is a natural thing. So I think we have to highlight these values, because we spoke about sharing values. The idea that we can love our countries, but at the same we can be patriotic, but at the same time, why not, we should also be citizens of the world and feel an attachment and a responsible towards others. This is, I think, one of the lessons we can take from today's very rich debate. The idea of shared values, that's the best way to share our prosperity. And at the end, a point that I saw in many of the statements, at the end it comes to an issue that was not said, but was the topic of a beautiful song, Respect, from two great African Americans, Otis Redding and Aretha Franklin. They said, yes, all I want is a little, yes, all I want is a little respect. If you respect each other, I think we build the basis for these shared values and shared prosperities that we can have a real partnership of equals. I thank you very much for your attention. I look forward for tomorrow's discussion.